Next up, I'd like to introduce David, who is going to give us a really interesting presentation. He was director of Asterisk Open Source for many years, has a background in training in the telecommunications sector and training engineers. So I'm just going to hand straight over. Thank you.
Hello there. I'd like to ask you a question. Thinking of your entire career to date, so far, have you ever seen someone who wasn't quite achieving the level of success that their technical skills and abilities said they should? Have you ever seen somebody like that? I think most people probably have, and it's a shame for those individuals. But let me ask you a different question by changing one word. In fact, I only need to change one letter. Have you ever been someone who wasn't quite achieving the level of success that your technical skills and abilities said that you should? Some people find themselves in that position. And I would submit to you that it's actually the ability to communicate your ideas, your technical skills and knowledge, which is going to help you be more successful. And so that's why I've got this presentation here. It says presenting to win, but I give it a little subtitle here, or a different title, Why Nerds Aren't Heard. It's one of the titles, but rather than just talking about why nerds aren't heard, we'll also look at what we can do about it. As Jennifer said, my name's David Duffett, and I spend my time helping geeks to speak, nerds to be heard, techies to talk, and in America, I even help propeller heads propel ahead with their communication opportunities. And so, what I'd like to do is just go through this agenda. I'd like to talk about the importance of speaking and presenting. And by the way, it doesn't have to be on a stage like this. This could just be general communication. It could be running a meeting. The principles I'm going to talk about are actually refined around presenting. However, they equally apply. In fact, I was at Bloomberg in New York a few months ago for their real-time communications conference, and somebody came up to me afterward and said, you were talking about presenting, but everything you said equally applied to running meetings and things like that. So it's communications in general. So I want to talk about the importance of speaking and presenting, why nerds aren't heard, the problems that can occur when occasionally technical people start talking. And then I want to introduce a framework for success, 7 power presenting protocols that whatever you do will help you communicate better. How does that sound? Is that okay? Great. In that case, I'll feel I can continue. But first of all, a quick geometric test, because I know we've been sat here a few hours, and it's always good to help people to get to know each other just that little bit more. And so there's nothing too complicated here. All you have to do is pick your favourite shape. Don't overanalyze it. Just go with your top of head response. You'll have a favourite shape of those 4. Okay, and who are the triangles in the room? Keep your hands up, have a good look round at the triangles. These are the directed and ambitious people. You know, the kind of shape says it all. They know where they're going, and they've probably got a good plan of how to get there. Thank you, triangles, that's great. Okay, who are the square people? Nothing wrong with that. Keep your hands up, have a good look round, see if you recognise the squares. These are the detailed, conscious and precise people. They like to dot the I's, cross the T's, and if they were doing a colouring book, they'd be right up into the corners, right up into the edge. You know the kind. Okay, circles. I thought there might be proportionally fewer circles in this group. Keep your hands up. These are the people. Yes, they've got the technical abilities, but they've got a kind of a people dimension to them as well. They like to help people out. Thank you, circles. And who are the wiggly lines? Very interesting group. Keep your hands up. These people have an unhealthy obsession. Now, keep your hands up and let's see if we can check off who it is. Is it Taylor Swift? No? Tom Cruise? Or maybe helping people with great interoperability or interconnectivity. Maybe it's that. Anyway, the presentation today does apply to all those groups. So, bit of background about me. I've been in telecoms a long old time. If you've ever heard of the Asterisk Open Source project, I was the longest running worldwide community director for that project. But, you know, you can tell a little bit of grey hair. I've been around since ISDN 30 and things like that. And I was very fortunate to be involved in some of the early days of voice over IP. And, of course, these days we're talking WebRTC as well. I've kind of evolved what I do. I still do technical things. A couple of weeks ago, I was actually teaching people to create phone systems from scratch on the Asterisk dial plan and on the Linux command line. But these days I spend more time teaching people to speak in public or to communicate better. And the reason I do this is I've worked in lots of technical companies, and I always really admired the geeks, the hardcore ones, the ones that you probably would email rather than go and talk to directly, the people that could interpret traces without any external information. They could just look at it and go, yeah, E5, that means an incoming call or whatever. But I thought to myself, these people make and support all of this equipment, and yet they're not getting as well recognised as this guy round the corner, the sales guy. I'm aware that Ron Burgundy, I think that's his name, he's not a sales guy, he's an anchorman, but I'm just using it for illustrative purposes. And these are the people that, went to Florida when they hit their targets. They were well recognised and rewarded. And I didn't want to take anything away from them, but what I did want to do was help the geeks to be more, do more, and have more. As I said, I was heavily involved in open source, and I used to run a conference mainly in America. It did come to England at least once, called Astracon, which was our global gathering. And so I've not only been on the side of kind of submitting talks for conferences, but I've also been on the side of picking talks for conferences as well. I've seen a lot of presentations, I've given a few presentations, and I've chosen many. And so over many years, I found myself in this position where I saw loads and loads of technical people that were really clever, really well-meaning, really nice people, but not always explaining themselves as well as they could. And so I thought I might be able to help. So in the geek universe, it is the tech that matters. That's the kind of currency that we hear about. And you hear phrases like, yeah, Martin really knows his stuff. Or Mary, she's particularly switched on about this particular technology. It's all about knowing your stuff. But why is it important to kind of think about this in a little bit more detail? Well, there's actually absolutely no problem for what I call G to G communication, or geek to geek. It's like a protocol of itself, really. And that's fine. There's a level of kind of rapport and understanding when geeks get together. However, a lot of the time, you might find yourself talking to audiences, or, not necessarily in presentations, but speaking to groups of people that don't come from the geek universe. You might be looking for a job, and the hiring manager might not be really technical. Could be looking to attract new business, make a sale. And again, the CFO, the people with the purse strings, might not be technical. And let's pretend you're wanting to raise money for your business. Again, those people that have got the money to invest are probably, maybe they were technical a while ago, but technologies move on. And so it's good to be able to communicate with less technical people if you can. In short, if you're a geek that can also speak, that's like a unicorn thing in the technical industry. There's not that many of them around. And so not only will it breed success in your career, but you'll also be more successful in other areas of life, because the confidence and the clarity that you get from being able to communicate properly will rub off into other areas of life. Okay, so here's the problem. I'm sure a lot of you that are into statistics will recognize this as a kind of standard distribution. Might call it a normal distribution. Of all the presentations that are given all around the world, and there are millions, just on Microsoft PowerPoint, apparently there's more than 30 million a day. So there's a lot of presentations. Of all of them, obviously, most of them must be about average. That's just a statistical fact. We can't change that. However, we've got this low category tending towards zero. We have what I call BCP. And BCP stands for buttock clenchingly poor. These are presentations that are so bad, they alter your physiology. They're really bad. So if you've ever seen somebody leaving a presentation, they're sort of going like this, you might have thought they're off to the bathroom, but really, they've been witnessing a terrible presentation that altered their physiology, and not very good. Up at the other end, we've got SOG, and that's great. That's standing ovation great. That's presentations that are that good that at the end of it, you can't wait to give the person a round of applause and do whatever they wanted you to do, whether it's buy something, change your behaviour, adopt a new working process, whatever it is, they've done it that well that you really, really love it. And here's the issue. Down at the bottom half, there is unfortunately a disproportional representation of technical people. They're disproportionately represented at that lower half. And so that's a problem that I'm trying to address. That's what I'm trying to get involved in and help. Okay, so the way this happens is that geeks accidentally sabotage their own presentations. I call it GPS, Geek Presentation Sabotage. And there's up to 7 ways. There might even be more. In fact, now might be a time to tell you that I love participation, and so I bought some little chocolatey prizes to give people that participate with questions. I was feeling really pleased with myself because I thought I'd matched the size of a chocolate bar and the room, that they'd be weighty enough for me to throw right to the back. And then I started worrying about hurting people. And so what I've got is I've got Jennifer and Tyrone, who are my chocolate distribution mechanism. And so if you do participate, then you could get... And by the way, I pulled out all the stops for LINX. These are Brazilian. I was in Brazil recently. You won't buy these in London. They're a banana-y chocolate thing. And actually, Lenny at the back tried one. What was it like, Lenny? Good. There you go. Vote of confidence from Lenny. That's nice, isn't it? Great chocolate bars. OK, so let's look at these. One of them is the first one, GPS, method 1, too tech-focused. Technical people love the technicalities. Often you get the scenario where the technical person is brought in to talk about the technicalities and they're not properly briefed. Some dodgy sales guy says, yeah, can you come in tomorrow and get involved? You know, well, what do you want me to do? Well, just do the same as you did last time, kind of thing. And this can lead to that technical person then just kind of sticking inside their home base of all the technicalities. I want to give you a quote in 3 parts from 3 different people. Are you ready? Okay, here's the first part. Theodore Roosevelt said, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Fair enough. Zig Ziglar added on to the end of that about them. They don't care how much you know until you know how much they care, until they know how much you care about them. And then David Duffett, that's me, I added a 3rd part, and here it is. The way they know you care is by what you choose to share. In other words, you don't dump all your technical information, you just give the relevant information that's required. So being too tech-focused is a bad thing. Oh, whoops, I've got a couple more there. No proper planning. Not always the technical person's fault. Sometimes they're kind of just left to it and dumped in it. And then doing it their way. So where this could take things slightly awry is a technical person could think, well, I like learning this way, and I've been asked to do this demo, so I'll do it that way. I'll get to some details about that a little bit later. Then there's not properly practicing their presentation. And, you know, the technical person's practice of their presentation is usually staring at their laptop, like the night before, the flight before, the hour before, and go, yeah, when I get to that slide, I must remember to say this. That's not necessarily great presentation. Then there's talking at the audience rather than involving them. The monotonous delivery, and one of the worst ones, no follow-up afterwards. And as you know from the sales world, the fortune really is in the follow-up. So why is this a problem? Well, as I already said, it's not a problem when it's geek to geek, so you don't need to worry about it. However, often the decision maker, as I was recently saying, is less technical. They've got the purse strings, and you need to be able to communicate the relevant parts of your material in a way that they can take in. Okay, so essentially knowing your stuff is not enough. You've really got to get to the point that you can communicate not all of your stuff, but the right parts of your stuff at the right technical level for the audience that you're going to address. Okay, why is this a problem? What does it lead to? Well, it leads to geeks missing out. And that's exactly the problem I'm trying to solve. I don't want geeks missing out. I want geeks earning everything that they should. But I want the money to flow. It's not good for you or your company, or if you're involved in any kind of overall project or open source project, it's just not good if you're not communicating in a way that everybody can understand. So we need to bridge that gap between knowing your stuff, which I already said is not enough. We need to cross the chasm and get to the point where you can communicate with confidence and enthusiasm. Now, you'd think by those pictures that all that takes is holding your hands out like that. And it is a little bit more than that. I just happened to get those pictures of people holding their hands out. Okay. And so what I can do now is I can reveal the Geek Presentation Mastery, the 7 power presenting protocols. And this is where I'm looking for a little bit more input and interaction. The Let The Geek Speak philosophy is all about helping specifically technical people. So, of course, you know, throughout the world, it's great for everybody to be good at presenting, and yet technical people often learn in a slightly different way to other people. So this is designed especially for technical people, to be easy to digest and easy to implement. It's a framework as opposed to a formula, because frameworks make the brain work. A formula, is a rigid kind of recipe. Well, we need people to be able to do their own thing to an extent. And so that last point is it's allowing people to be true to themselves and deliver power presentations in their own natural way. Often you hear people go, oh, I'm a bit scared of speaking in public. Here's my take, and I want you to ask you for yours in a moment. My take is actually the major fear is not speaking in public. The major fear is being ill-prepared in front of a big group of people. Because if you were really well prepared and you had a structure about what you were going to say and you know your subject, my opinion is that that would melt away probably about 70% of all the fears that people have. What does anybody else think? What are the reasons what other reasons are there that people might feel they're scared of speaking in public? I've got chocolate distribution on hand here. And Tyrone's got a lovely little bag, look. It goes with his outfit beautifully. Yeah, very nice. Okay, what are the reasons? I've got one in my head, but I'd rather... Oh, there's one just over there, please.
They think everybody knows what they're about to say.
Okay, sir, yes. Do give that... What's your name, sir? Andy, please give Andy a chocolate. Yeah, they might think that people know what they're going to say, or they might think that people in the audience know more than me. And of course, in a technical way, that gets a little bit difficult. Here's another one. They might think that they have to be somebody they're not. In other words, they've seen somebody that they really enjoyed presenting. And they thought, oh, that person's funnier than me, or more out there than me. Maybe that person's more serious than me. And again, that's another lie. The best presentations are given when you're busy being yourself, because you don't have to think about that too much. If you're occupied with trying to be somebody that you're not, as well as not being properly prepared, then we could have some trouble, and nobody wants any trouble. Okay, power presenting protocols. Let's have a look at them. The first one is the purpose. And I'm not just talking about the purpose of a presentation. That's a very valid thing to talk about, and it might be quite a narrow one to teach the participants the top 5 things about this new product. So we need to talk about that. But what are the wider objectives of the presentation? Maybe a wider objective is actually to have less tech support calls on this particular piece of equipment because we've taught everybody so well about it that they're handled better in the sales process. So we need to think at least a couple of levels. Then we got the plan. Have you ever considered people's attention spans and how they start high and they wane a little bit over a period of time, whatever that might be, and then they get up towards the end? If you phoned a TV company and said, I'd like to buy the first ad in your ad break and the last ad in your ad break, did you know they'd cost more than all the rest? And that's simply because they understand the technical terms of primacy and recency for having these beginnings and endings. And of course, once you're into your presentation, how do you get people's attention peaked? What mechanisms can you use? That's what planning is all about. Then there's preferences. I've got a little example for preferences in a moment that I'd like to go through. Then there's practicing, has to be out loud. Participation, because nobody likes having stuff done to them or at them. They want it done with them. And then after participation, it's actually getting out and performing it. I'd like you to look at those first 5 protocols and notice that they all happen before you ever get out in front of an audience or start the meeting or whatever it might be, because it's all about the preparation. It's really all about the preparation. So the first 5 protocols will make you extremely confident about what you're going to do. Then you get out and perform, and then the last one is the post-event. How do you follow up? So those are the 7 power presenting protocols. Now, here's the thing. As you don't worry, sir, I saw you trying to take a picture. They'll be coming back again. They'll be there. We'll have them on the screen again. As you probably know, you don't have to be a mile ahead of everybody else to win a race. You just have to be a few inches ahead. And here's the sad fact, that many people just don't take care about their presentations, their meetings, or their communications in general. And if you just worked on a couple of these protocols and improved 10 or 20% in just a couple, you'd be head and shoulders above most people. Imagine what it'd be like if you actually worked on all of them. You'd be absolutely stand out. Okay, now you might be sat in the audience thinking, actually, my presentations are pretty good. And I'm really pleased for you if that's the case. That's excellent. And if you are sort of up towards this end of the market, then I'd invite you, as we look at these 7 protocols in just a little bit more detail, to think of them as 7 camera angles. 7 ways you can look at an existing presentation and think to yourself, oh yeah, did I plan it properly? Or was I really thinking about how people learn? And you could improve the presentations you've already got. These will work very well for building a presentation from scratch, but equally, they will help you refine something you've already got. Okay, so first of all is the purpose. Do you remember I was talking about not thinking just about the presentation, but that higher level? When you're asked to give a presentation, how many different parties are involved that you can think of? There's you as the presenter. Who else is involved? Who said the audience? Sir, what's your name? Simon. We need to reward Simon, please, Jennifer, with a nice Brazilian chocolate. Obviously, yeah, the audience, they're very heavily involved. And there's one other person that I tend to think about. Who else? Yeah, what's your name, sir? Neil. Well, you can use it to win a friend later. In fact, you just did, Neil. You just did. Very nicely done. Okay. Yeah, there's the organizer. Could be the conference organizer. Could be your boss that's asked you to give a presentation. Could be somebody else. Could be your sales executive. In my world, I call them the sponsor. So we've got the sponsor, the audience, and you. Let me let you into a little secret, if you don't mind. There are no presentation police that say you cannot talk to these people during the process of creating your presentation. So wouldn't it be a great idea to talk to the audience before you met them, if you can? Now, of course, at a conference, you can't always do that, so you have to take some educated guesses. But if it was going to be a sales presentation, you might send a quick email with a few bullet points saying, this is what I was thinking to cover, what do you think? And they can come back to you and go, well, we don't need that, and actually want a bit more information on that. So that when you get in front of them, there's a massive overlap between what they need and what you give them, because that's the best sort of presentations. So if we can do that, that's great. And we can use a little agreement. It doesn't have to be war and peace. This is just a couple of lines on an email and just circulate it between those 3 lots, the organizer or boss or whoever, the audience and you, until everybody's literally on the same page or on the same email. And that will work really well. Then there is the plan. We need a map for the presentation. This is, again, as I told you, it's a framework rather than a formula, but this is a map that I introduce people to that gives them proportions of time to use in a presentation for the introduction, for the main body, and to finish. You'll notice it says QS3 at the end. That stands for questions, then the summary, then finishing on a 3. You see, the thing is, and I know lots of presentations have ended this way in this very room, but actually finishing your presentation with questions is a terrible thing to do. It's a horrible thing to do. And here's why. If we know the beginning of a presentation is important and the end of a presentation is important, why would we waste the end on a question and answer session that could kind of go off in a left field direction, or somebody might ask an irrelevant question and people will be left thinking about that? Much better to handle questions before the end of the presentation. Definitely deal with them because we want to answer questions, but then summarize your main points during that prime time at the end and finish with a bang. Okay. Now, here's the one where I've got a bit more audience interaction planned. Thinking about different people's preferences. Now, we had that silly game at the beginning where you picked a shape, and that just shows that everybody's a little bit different, doesn't it? But people learn differently. People take information in a little bit differently as well. And I want you to think about this. I want you to imagine getting a brand new piece of technical equipment. Maybe you won a prize in a competition. And you've got this brand new piece of equipment. Maybe it's a phone, maybe it's a coffee machine. Doesn't really matter what it is, but whatever you want it to be. When it arrives, Amazon deliver it or whoever, what's the first thing you're going to do? Are you going to rip it open and start playing with it? Or are you going to sit in your comfy chair and read the manual? Or are you going to sit back and think, if it was a coffee machine, let me just think about previous coffee machines I've owned and my relationship with them and what I'm looking to get out of my relationship with this new coffee machine. So how many people would just rip it out of the box and start playing with it? Okay, randomly, that man over there, let's give him a chocolate since he's close to you, Jennifer. Thank you. Yeah, so that would be what I would call action orientation. You learn by doing. And of course, that's a great thing. I'd expect there to be a lot of learn by doing people in a room like this. How many people want to read the entire manual? Sit down and have a go through it? Yeah, fewer. What's your name, Ella? Ella, can we reward Ella with a bit of Brazilian chocolate as well. They're very nice, by the way. I don't even know why I'm giving them away because they're my favourites. Probably good for my diabetes, actually, to give them away. Anyway, yes, Ella. So reading the manual, nothing wrong with that. It just goes to show that it's different. And here's the point I want to make. Imagine if you, as a technical person, had to deliver a presentation where you were teaching somebody about a piece of software, say. You'd think, oh yeah, I learned by, well, you might not even have this thought process, but let's just pretend you do. You might have a process that goes, I like to learn by doing, so I'm going to put the mouse in their hands, get them to do it, and I'll give them just a little bit of guidance, and they'll suck it all up. Imagine if the audience were actually manual reading people, and they wanted a bit more input first before they got hold of it. Can you see there'd be a mismatch, and it wouldn't be as effective? So when you're thinking about a presentation, it's always best to walk in the audience shoes first, or in the other people's shoes, the people in the meeting. And that reminds me of a little bit of advice from Jack Handey of Saturday Night Live. I don't know whether you ever come across Jack Handey. He said, if you're ever going to criticise somebody, walk a mile in their shoes first. Because then when you do criticise them, you'll be a mile away and have their shoes. It's useful advice, isn't it, I think? Useful advice. Okay. So that part was, just consider the learning styles or the way other people take in information. Then we've got the practice. Now, practicing has to be done out loud. You really have to do it out loud. Who can tell me an advantage of practicing out loud? Yes, sir.
Sorry, what was the question?
What's the advantage of practicing out loud? One of the advantages.
You get to know how it sounds and you can try different things.
Perfect, exactly. Because very often the phrases and words that sound great in your head, when you actually do them out loud, could be a bit clunky. You could find yourself tripping over them, or they just don't sound right. Thank you, Neil. We won't reward you with chocolate on this occasion. So you find out how it sounds out loud. Who can give me another advantage? Yes, sir, just there. Timing's perfect. Yes, let's give... what's your name, sir?
Malcolm.
Well done, Malcolm. Yes.
Good at time management, at least.
Yeah. Especially if you're on a multi-speaker roster, you need to kind of finish in your slot, don't you? There might be some work to do in that particular area. And so what should we practice? Well, obviously the whole thing in order to get the timing, like Malcolm said. But if we know the beginning and the ending of the meeting, of the presentation are more important, wouldn't we practice those more? We probably would. Because when we come out and start off, that's when we could be a little bit more nervous. So if we practice that more, we can kind of be on autopilot. And also the end, when we've got the call to action or the main points or whatever it is, again, that needs to be practiced too. Who would we do it to? Well, ideally, some very valued and loving colleagues that really want the best for you. And they can give you feedback not only on your presentation style, but on the substance as well, because they understand the tech. However, if you can't get them, then why not to family and friends who are sympathetic? And if you can't get them, then everybody's got a mobile phone with a voice recorder, haven't they? Or even a video recorder. So there's no excuse for not practicing out loud. And here's what I like to say. If a presentation is worth giving, and by the way, if it isn't, why are you bothering in the first place? But if a presentation is worth giving, it's worth giving badly until you can give it well. And the badly is in the practicing bit, and the well is in front of your target audience. Okay, this is an excuse to put my son up here. When my son was 10 or 12 or something, he wanted to learn to play the guitar. He said, I want to learn to play the guitar. And we said, okay, here's a horrible guitar and one of those really nasty amps that you hang on your belt. And if you go away and actually do something and, make some progress, we'll pay for some proper lessons. Well, you can see that he actually did. And now he's a performer. He's played, what's the big festival here? Glastonbury. He's played Glastonbury several times. He's played South by Southwest in Texas. He's supported a number of well-known bands around the UK. But can you see the progression? First of all, he's a little bit self-conscious, a little bit awkward, and you can see he kind of finds himself over time. The reason I'm just saying that is the more you do it, the better you get. And so one of my encouragements to you would be to actually find excuses to do presentations. Get out there and have a go, because the more you do it, the better you get. Then there's participation. Wouldn't it be a kind of a meta thing if we had some audience participation about participation? That would be very meta, wouldn't it? So what ways can you think of to involve the audience in a presentation?
Give them chocolate.
Love it. I love it. That's meta, that one, isn't it? Yes. What's your name, sir? Doug. Was it Doug? Doug, yeah, let's make sure Doug gets some chocolate. Thank you, Doug. I noticed Jennifer's giving out all the chocolate, Tyrone. I don't want to, yeah, we need some people nearer the back to answer some of these questions. Yes, we can bribe people to participate. That's one way. How else can we involve people? Yes, sir.
Ask questions.
Questions are great. In fact, there's a book by a body language guy called Alan Pease. It's quite old now, but its title is Questions Are the Answer. Very, very powerful. Yes, thank you. What was your name, sir? Ivan, thank you very much. That's great. Okay, how else? They're not the only two ways, are they? Bribery and asking questions. There's loads. Yes, sir.
Make them laugh.
Well, yeah, love it. Make them laugh. What's your name, sir? Edwin. Henry. Sorry, Henry. My apologies. Yeah, absolutely. Humour is useful, but it has to be done in your own style. I'll give you a quick example. Many years ago, I was teaching presentation skills to a whole group of people in a telecoms company, and one of the guys in there was actually the health and safety man and the facilities manager. So he wasn't like strictly a technical telecoms man. And he wasn't a kind of get out there and wave your hands about kind of presenter, but he did have to go in front of groups for induction. And so we worked with him on his own personal style, and he came out and sat on a desk at the beginning of the presentation and said, "Hands up if you want the afternoon off." And of course, everybody puts their hands up, and he went, "In hospital. Because that's where you'll be if you don't give me 15 minutes of your time just to go through this health and safety briefing." So you can see, you can even the quieter people, we can help out. Yeah, involvement equals commitment. The more you involve people, the more committed they'll be to the outcome that's good for everybody. We haven't exhausted this mine of participation. Yes, sir. That's a beautiful thing. That's called the appropriate analogy. I love it. That's using something that people already know to introduce a new concept. So, quick example, if we wanted to talk to a bunch of gardeners about Ohm's law, I don't know quite why we would, but go with me. We want to talk to a bunch of gardeners about Ohm's law defining the relationship between voltage, current and resistance. We might talk about the hose pipe in the garden, and when we tread on the hose pipe, it's a well-worn analogy, isn't it? When we tread on the hose pipe, we impede the flow of the water. And so, yes, the art of the appropriate analogy. Brilliant. Okay, thank you for that. We'll motor on. So then there's performance, getting out there. And here's what you don't want. Because attitudes are infectious. If you ever come out to do a presentation that you can't be 100% enthusiastic about, it transmits. Have you ever seen this? When somebody's a bit awkward about presenting, it kind of transmits into the audience. If you look at the word enthusiasm, the last four letters are I-A-S-M. I want you to remember this. That stands for I am sold myself. You've got to be sold yourself on anything you do. And here's a little bit of, not presentational advice, but really kind of general work advice. If you're asked to do a presentation that you can't do a brilliant job of, you need to push back in a win-win way. To say, actually, I don't think I'm the best person. Maybe it's because I don't know the equipment, or maybe it's because I'm not enthusiastic about that particular product line, or whatever it is. But there needs to be a little bit of pushback in order. You want to help, but you want to do the best you can. And if you can't give an amazing presentation and get people looking a bit like that, these are the lean dust people. This is in Dusseldorf, and this is a group of people that get together to talk about lean methodology. And look, they're actually smiling in there. It's a bit difficult to see in there, but that's quite possible to achieve that sort of thing. Okay, how do we do it? Well, first thing is be true to yourself. You must be absolutely true to yourself. There's no point at all in giving a presentation where you're trying to be somebody that you're not. So be true to yourself. Use your voice and your body. So how can we do that? Can anybody tell me how we can use our voice to generate more excitement or gravitas in a presentation? Yes, Neil? The appropriate pause, or maybe the inappropriate pause. Like it. Nice. Okay, yes. You're quite right. Can we give Neil a chocolate so that he can give it to somebody else and make more friends? But not the same person, Neil. We don't want you showing too much favouritism here. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So we can go with the pauses, the pace. The more you speed up with your voice, the more exciting it's going to get. You've probably seen YouTube videos of people angling for a phone. Go, I'm going to mess you up. I'm going to. And when they raise the pitch and raise the pace of their voice, it gets a bit more exciting. On the other hand, have you ever seen slimy politicians come out and they start talking? They slow their voice right down and go very deep and go, of course, this is going to be the best thing for the country. You know they're lying, but it's because they've gone lower and deeper and slower, it kind of sounds a little bit plausible. Okay, and then there's your posture. Again, have you ever seen engineering people come out and they're a little bit slouchy? They're not looking at the people they should be looking at. That can happen sometimes. So you really want to make sure that you're out there and looking enthusiastic as far as you can. Okay, and then there is the post-event. Nobody likes this, do they? I'm on a one-man mission to stop drive-bys, but I'm not talking about drive-by shootings in this case. I'm actually talking about drive-by presentations. These are the kind of presentations delivered by people that are not properly briefed. I'm not saying it's always their fault, but they're not properly briefed. They drop in, they do a presentation, they rattle off, nobody ever hears from them again. That's a drive-by presentation, and they need to be stamped out because they're doing nobody any favours at all. Do you remember that agreement I talked about? Imagine if you did have that on an email, and then after the presentation, not only could you talk to the people in the room to find out whether you achieved that narrow objective for the presentation, but you could also go back to the boss or the sponsor a few weeks later and say, are we actually getting less tech support phone calls about this particular product now? Did we achieve that kind of bigger thing? If you were looking at the Kirkpatrick model for training needs evaluation, which you probably wouldn't be, but if you were, that's the level they call behavioural change. So if you've got that agreement, you've got something that you can go back to. Stephen Covey calls it beginning with the end in mind. So you're actually looking what you're trying to achieve. Okay. Now, has anybody ever seen this, ever, or something like it? Yes, what, Eric? Let's give Eric some chocolate because he's seen something a bit like that. That's how much I value participation, Eric, thank you. Yeah, it could be Rumble, could be BitChute, could be brand YouTube, Vimeo, whatever. Occasionally, you're trying to watch a video and you see the old buffering thing, and it's very, very annoying. Who can win another piece of chocolate by telling what does it actually mean when you see that? Not you, Eric, in this case. Who can tell me what it probably means?
There's a bottleneck somewhere.
Okay, yeah, what's your name, sir?
Rob.
Rob. Can Rob have a chocolate? And we'll use Tyrone. Look at Tyrone with his little bag there. So cute. Thank you, Tyrone. Really appreciate it. And Rob gets the chocolate. Yeah, there's a bottleneck. There's a problem of some kind. We've got a bad connection. Now, of course, we understand that it could be the Wi-Fi, it could be the underlying network, it might even be the server at the other end. But to the average user, they just got a poor connection. Okay. Here's what I want to submit to you, that when you go to do a presentation or have a meeting, your connection, your bandwidth between you and your audience, or you and the people in the morning, in the meeting, not in the morning, might be a morning meeting, but that bandwidth, that connection is absolutely crucial. And yet all too often people launch into a meeting or into a presentation without having established any of that, and it leads to poor results. I'll give you a real-life example. Many years ago, I was the training manager of a company called Dolphin, who were also to do with NB3, National Band 3, and we were introducing the Tetra radio system, some of you might remember it, into the UK. And we had a guy from, I won't name the company, but a well-known company that does a lot of radio training. And he came to do a 3-day Tetra course for people that had never really come across Tetra before. This guy spent no time opening up a relationship, a connection with his audience. And subsequently, people felt that they couldn't ask him a question. It was almost as if it's going to be a bit too much hard work for him to ask a question. About the third day in the afternoon, people were just melt, the relationships were melting to the extent that somebody felt they could ask a question. Now, I would put it to you that we didn't get the full value of that training because this person didn't spend time broadening that relationship. And that connection, by the way, has a special name, and it's rapport. It's the rapport you have with the people that you're dealing with that is that connection. So the more you can open it and enlarge it across what you're doing, the better it's going to be. So let's look at those 7 power presenting protocols again. And sir, the one who was going to take the picture, now is the time, because I'm going to have all 7 protocols on the screen in a moment. So if you consider the purpose of your presentation, the purpose of your meeting, might even be the purpose of a one-to-one interaction. Maybe you're an engineering person that's gone into management and you've been called on to have kind of a performance review with somebody. This will work for all of those situations. You need to consider the purpose, the desired outcomes. And, importantly, if possible, talk to the people ahead of time and agree it. So if you do that, and then you plan the presentation to make sure that you do the absolute best in terms of people's attention spans, in terms of the way they understand information, in terms of piquing their attention when it could be waning in the middle of it. And by the way, here's a quick handy tip. Put your money away, Eric. I'm going to include this in the ticket price. Imagine if you were asked to do a presentation and the anticipated timescale is roughly about an hour, say. If you broke that into 2 half hours, you've now bought yourself more attention because people's attention starts high at the beginning of a session, then it comes up towards the end. So now you've got 2 beginnings and 2 ends, so you've got more attention. You can keep that one. Okay, if you plan it, if you then consider people's preferences and how they want to take in information, and you practice your presentation or your meeting or whatever it is with them in mind, further, you consider the modes and means of participation. And by the way, even though we had a friendly participation session, we missed out gamification, we missed out sharing of experiences, we missed out, frontline anecdotes. There's all sorts of things that we could have talked about. Participation is absolutely key. And so if you do that, and you make sure that you're on top of your performance, and lastly, that you absolutely follow up properly after the presentation, is it that the same group of people you were talking to need some more information? Or is it that there's another group that needs the same information? You won't know unless you're talking to people afterwards and specifically to the sponsor. If you do all that, look what happens down the middle. Rapport. It's woven into the whole fabric of the 7 power presenting protocols. When you talk to people ahead of time saying, I'm thinking to do this, what do you think? Then you're beginning to establish rapport, aren't you? And so this is what it's all about. Did you notice when I came out, by the way, at the very beginning, I never met you before, but I showed you the agenda and I said, how's that? And nobody stood on their chairs and went, sorry, mate, you got it entirely wrong. You've got to change this and do that. The point is, you kind of gave me a little bit of a nod. And from that point, I was doing this with you and for you rather than at you and to you. You might call it in marketing terms a micro commitment because people, yeah, that'll be all right. So if you can't meet your audience ahead of time, then the very least you can do is ask them about what you're going to do before you do it and get people involved like that. Okay, this is the extra here. This is the, but wait, there's more part of the presentation. If you've ever watched late night TV, and you've just got your credit card out because you're going to buy this Cyclone mini jet oven that sits on top of the worktop and is based on space shuttle technology. You're about to buy it and they go, but wait, there's more. This is the more. But in this case, it's not closet maximizers because that's what it usually is. I'm going to give you 3 very powerful things. I already gave you the first one, rapport. They all begin with R, very handily. So you must establish, maintain, and grow rapport across this whole process, before the presentation, during the presentation, and after the presentation. But then there's relevance. Do you remember my extra bit of the quote? The way you show how you care is by being very choosy about what you share. You make sure it's 100% relevant. You don't want to give people superfluous information. It's good enough that they're actually paying you attention. You need to honour that by only giving them the things that they need. And then reality. The more real you are with people, and I'm talking about appropriate reality. You don't have to go into your life story and start talking about your divorce and all that kind of stuff. I'm talking about if, for instance, you've got a story from the field where something went a little bit wrong, and you can share it just to be a little bit vulnerable and to show people that sometimes things do go wrong, but you recovered from it and you were able to move on. Then those 3 things will be bonuses for you in your communications. Okay, so now before I finish this presentation with my main points, what questions have you got? If any. Tyrone, have you still got some chocolates in there? Yeah, there are still some chocolates. Right at the back there, sir, yes.
Hi, if you introduce your agenda at the start of the presentation and you get like some negative feedback about points, you would modify your presentation there and then?
Yeah, assuming that you're well enough knowledgeable on the subject matter, then yes. If somebody says, actually, that point 3 is totally irrelevant, the first thing I'd do is say, what's your name, sir? Colin. I'd say, Colin said that part's totally irrelevant. Is that the case for everybody else? Now, the audience might go, actually, no, Colin's from this special department. He already knows that stuff, but actually we need it. So you're going to check with the rest of the audience. But if you are truly professional, then you can be kind of on your toes a little bit and be flexible. And people will love you for it, especially if it results in you not telling them some stuff they didn't need to know. They'll be made up about it. Thank you for that, Colin. Did you get your chocolate? Great. Any other questions before we finish? Yes, gentleman over there. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so Matthew, one factor when I had a trainer on how to do presentations was that know the tooling. So
say that part again, please.
Know the tooling. What
Right.
are you presenting with? PowerPoint?
Absolutely.
And one of the features was if you're putting up too many bullets, people just tend to stare at the words. And you can hit W to white out the screen or B to black out the screen.
Useful
and it
tips.
redirects the attention back to the speaker.
Yeah, I like it. To me, B for black is great. W for white is where you do your little rabbit things on the screen, isn't it? Because it goes all white. I really like that. Yes, thank you very much. Do hand over that chocolate. Yeah, knowing your presentation tech is very important. I had an embarrassing thing where I was doing an online speech for a company in America, and my PowerPoint literally crashed. It actually crashed, and it was embarrassing. We got back on the road, but it was so annoying because I'd actually practiced it. They used Zoom, so I'd practiced this presentation in Zoom, tried to recreate everything I could. Yeah, it's a horrible thing. So yeah, I totally agree. Know your tech. And let me build on top of that, decide whether you need any tech. Many years ago, I was watching an Intel presentation, and it was just when PowerPoint had come out, and they'd got everything. They got bullet points zooming on with squealing noises. They got it all. And they were talking about CSMA CD, Carrier Sense Multiple Access Collision Detect. And somebody put their hand up and said, I don't really understand that. And the guy pressed the B for black, went over to the flip chart and said, it's like this. And he drew it up. That was the best part of the whole day. He had people's attention. He did a little diagram, and everybody loved it. It was much, much better than all the tech. So decide whether you're going to even use it. The trouble is we tend to think about the slides as the presentation, and they're jolly well not, are they? They're just a visual aid to the presentation. So always an interesting thing. And just on the flip chart thing, imagine, this is a silly example, but I'm sure you can use it in your own way. Imagine if as part of your presentation, you had to have a map of the UK. Imagine if you did have a flip chart and you drew it on in very light pencil so nobody else could see it. And you said, oh, imagine if we had to just look at the UK and you went, and you drew this perfect picture of the UK. People would say, flipping heck. Alex really knows his stuff about the UK, but of course you've cheated a little bit and you've popped that on. The other thing is if you're wanting to cover certain points on a flip chart, you can give yourself notes. Of course you can do that in PowerPoint as well. But you've raised an interesting area there, so the whole thing about tech or not. Thank you for that. Okay, anything else? But yes, sir. Here comes a mic and here comes a chocolate.
It was just a follow-on comment really from the question about tech, which is one thing I would urge people not to do during a presentation is read the slides, which I've seen happen too often. It's boring as heck, and frankly, I could read it quicker than you can anyway.
You're quite right. And shall I let you into a secret? They're not listening, are they? You can talk to them all you want, but they're not listening. If there's lots of information that has to be given to people, just share a link afterwards. You know, you really don't want to fill it up with loads and loads of text. He said, thinking my next couple of slides might have quite a lot of text on. But I'm not going to read them. I'm not going to read them. Okay, we're going to carry on now, and I'm going to finish up. If you've got any other questions that you'd like to ask, then feel free to see me afterwards. But now we need to finish. So here are the key points. Your communication skills and your presentation skills really are the key to success, assuming that you already know your stuff. This is a layer to be built on top of that. They really will set you out from the crowd. The current level of presentations and demos, and I'm not naming any names in this room, I'm just talking about generally, when you see these things, let's just say there is room for improvement. And so if you were to work on any of these aspects, those 7 power presenting protocols, you could stand out, and that will help your career, it will help your sales, and all sorts of other things as well. And seize the opportunities. So jump into presentation opportunities, and if they don't exist, create them. Let me ask you a quick question. Have you ever seen a problem at work and you think you understood what the problem was? Like Team B didn't really understand what Team A was doing or something like that. Has anybody ever seen that? Perfect opportunity to get a presentation on the go. However, best not to jump in and go, I'll do a presentation. Go to your boss or whoever is relevant and say, I was just thinking that these two groups don't seem to understand what's going on. You go, yeah, it's been like that for years. It's a real pain in the neck. And then you can go, oh, I could do a presentation about that. If you get some pizzas, we'll do a little lunch and learn. Can you imagine how wonderful that is? You've helped the company. You've shown yourself to be somebody that's proactive. So jump in where you can. Okay, what next steps are there? Well, the first one is get out there and start presenting more. Really take some time to deliver presentations, create presentations, help other people with their presentations, because the more you do it, the better you get. And I am available for weddings, bar mitzvahs, other social occasions. I tend to work either with executives on specific presentations or with groups like pre-sales groups or tech sales groups or even technical people. Because here's the thing. Technical people spend a lot of time creating elegant solutions. But then they fall down in communicating that excellence to other parts of the business somehow. So even if this is a technical person that's not involved in sales or marketing, they kind of are involved in sales and marketing and selling of their ideas, in the marketing of their ideas. And so this is applicable to all technical people, I think. Okay, listen, it's been a pleasure talking to you about why geeks should speak and nerds should be heard and even why techies should talk. It's been a pleasure going through those 7 power presenting protocols, but the biggest pleasure will come for you when you actually do some of this stuff and end up reaping the rewards of being a geek that can speak. Thank you. And by the way, this will take you through to a survey, and part of the survey will ask you if you'd like a copy of the slides. So if you'd like a copy of the slides, this is the way to do it. Thank you.
Thanks, David.